Hello and of course welcome! To many, the PlayStation Portable is one of the greatest gaming consoles of all time. But which PSP are they referring to? Because over the years there have been many iterations of the PlayStation Portable, and today I'll be going over each iteration, looking at their differences and letting you know which system I would recommend. But first, a message from us at 16-bit. If you don't know what to do with your Game Boy, Game Boy Color, or Game Boy Advance games when you're done playing with them, why not check out our Game Boy display shelves? They're designed and 3D printed by us to hold your games comfortably and display them beautifully. If you're interested, why not check out the description to figure out where to get them today. We're going to start off with the original PSP, the PSP Model 1000. It's also known as the PSP Fat. The PSP Fat is a lot bulkier than its younger brothers, but functionally identical. It has an auto-ejecting UMD drive, which is broken on mine, a 32 megabytes of RAM, it uses a standard memory stick for storage, and it has integrated wireless networking for local multiplayer or, back in the day, internet connectivity. This is, in every sense of the word, the essence of the PlayStation Portable. But no less than 3 years later, Sony decided to make a cost-reduced newer model of the PSP, one that would be slimmer and lighter than the original, and it was called the PSP 2000, or as it was referred to as the PSP Slim and Light, shortened to the PSP Slim. Sony continued using this design with this next iteration of the PSP, model number 3000, also known as the PSP Slim and Bright, which is the one I have. Spec-wise, there really isn't much to differentiate between the two. Both systems have an increased 64 megabytes of RAM, though what the additional 32 megs were used for is a bit unknown. Both systems have the same form factor, the same battery, the same video out, and a faster, more improved UMD drive. But the differences between the PSP and Slim are surprisingly minute. The biggest difference is the display. The PSP Slim uses an upgraded fat display, while the Bright uses a much brighter and more vibrant display than the Slims. But other than that, and some minor differences to the home row, these systems are identical. Though the PSP Slim will be the last standard PSP with the UMD drive here in North America, there are still 2 more PSPs left to look at. The next PSP to launch was the PSP Go. Designed to be an all-digital PSP in an age where we were still renting our movies, it was smaller, lighter, and sliddier than even the PSP Slim. Since it was made almost 5 years after the PSP Fat, it also got some new features, like built-in Bluetooth and 16 whole gigabytes of internal storage. You can even expand that storage if you wanted with a memory stick, but you need the more newer and smaller M2 memory stick instead of the regular one. Sadly, the PSP Go didn't really sell well, since it was an old digital system in an age when the internet speeds were still measured in kilobits per second rather than megabits. And finally, we have ourselves the last PSP ever to be released, the PlayStation Portable Steet. The Steet was a budget PSP based on the Slim with design cues from the Fat. And to keep the cost down, they removed some unnecessary and outdated features like the woefully out-of-date wireless networking and the stereo speakers, which they turned mono. And here it is, or at least here it would be if it ever actually came out to North America. For reasons only known to Sony, it was a PAL exclusive system, selling only for €100 back when it came out in 2011, mere months before the launch of the PlayStation Vita in Japan. And sadly, after all these years, this is the only PlayStation Portable that I haven't been able to personally test. So now that we've talked about all the PSPs and seen most of them, which PSP is the best to buy today? Well, if you're going for value, I won't recommend the PSP Steet or the PSP Go. You see, the Steet was only ever released in PAL territory, so not many people actually had one. And the PSP Go was an old digital system, so not many people actually wanted one. And as a result, they didn't really sell well, and there isn't a lot of PSP Steets or PSP Go's around. And in the global market of collectors, there's a huge demand for these systems, which are driving up the prices of them. So don't be surprised when you start looking for them online and you see that they're well above $100. Personally, I love the PSP Go. I think it's one of the best systems here. But because it is a digital-only system, it does mean that the library of games that I have access to is very limited. And there are actually a few titles on here that aren't compatible with the Go at all. And honestly, I was okay with this. I moved to the PSP Go because back when I bought the system new, I kept breaking normal PSPs. And over time, I was able to acquire most of my gaming library, and for the rest of it, there were ways around it. And with some modding, I was able to get access to more. But if what you're looking for is a good value PSP, the Fat will be your best bet. This is because the Fat isn't as desirable as the other PSPs, making it surprisingly reasonably priced online, and from my experience, a bargain at local shops. With that said, the Fat isn't the perfect PSP. Its screen isn't as bright or as nice as later PSPs, and the UMD load times are noticeably slower. But honestly, I've never had issues with the display or its lower brightness. It actually works especially well at night. And for those slow disc game load times, I'd actually recommend any PSP owner to play with the backup copies of their game rather than with the UMD themselves. The differences are truly night and day. But sadly, even then, this still isn't the best PSP, and won't be writing recommendations unless you're on a tight budget. With its bulkier design, I yearn for the much slimmer and lighter symbolings, especially if I plan to game more than just a few minutes. Which leaves us with the PSP Slims. Both systems feel nice in the hands and both are light enough for long gaming sessions, and they can do pretty much everything any other PSP can do. But my issues with the PSP Slims is with their unreliability and their high prices. For their unreliability, I can only compare it with my Nintendo DS. I've only ever had 2 DSs in my entire lifetime, with only one of those 2 systems breaking. Whereas I've owned over 6 PSP Slims of various models, and in that time I only ever sold off one of them. On top of that, due to their high demand, their prices are surprisingly high, considering how popular they were. But despite that, the PSP Slim is still a great system to own, and the best PSP to get, no matter which variant you choose. I own a 3000 because I got this for an amazing deal, and this 3000 could have easily been a 2000, and in my view, it would not make much of a difference. My only recommendation is to look around locally first before buying a Slim online. You'll often find them for a cheaper price than what I've typically seen 2000s or 3000s go for online. And after that, whichever system you get, a 2000 or a 3000, will completely depend on your personal taste, which displays you like, and for me, the price point. But no matter what PSP you get, the PSP system is a fantastic platform to own, with lots of functionality, lots of customizations, and of course, games galore. So I hope this video helps narrow down your choices for systems, or helps justify the one that you picked. But anyways, I'd like to thank you very much for watching. I hope you have yourself a good day, and as always, take care.